Welcome to the video series on the Vermont Green Streets Guide, a resource for planning and building green infrastructure within our communities. In this video, you will hear Sophie Sauvé lead you through Section 8, Plant Selection Considerations.
In a green street or green parking lot, plant selection depends on the type of system, the purpose and function of the planting, in other words, the type of work the plants will be expected to do, site conditions both above and below ground, maintenance that is currently available and that will be required immediately following planting, aesthetics, can the plantings be wild or should they be more formal, and how do we expect the plants to look like once they are established, and also discusses planting zones. Selecting the right plants for a project takes time, but is well worth the effort. Like humans and animals, plants are affected by their habitat. That is, different site variables and constraints can determine whether a plant thrives or dies. The following slides will discuss key plant selection factors. One of these is site conditions, which includes considering the site's limitations both above and below ground. Below ground considerations means understanding the soil texture, structure, drainage, and chemical properties. Inadequate soil volume or soil compaction will limit growth. Trees and other vegetation benefit from being planted in a continuous soil system. That is, connecting planting areas underground benefits the health and growth of plants. Noting that medium and large trees require 500 to 1,000 cubic feet of soil to grow to maturity can mean reevaluating the small tree pit typically used in sidewalks. Above ground considerations include understanding exposure, plants' different ability to adapt to temperatures and cold, and overhead space to accommodate crown development. Planting plants should consider mature size, height, and spread in relationship to potential conflicts including sidewalks, parking areas, utilities, lights, viewsheds, and line of sight. Line of sight is especially important to consider in terms of safety. While visibility of motorists is built into typical street standards, it may be easy to overlook pedestrian visibility from a safety perspective. Keeping in mind that visibility from public areas onto the sidewalk or into parking lots is important for the comfort of all users. Consider avoiding creating visual barriers and focus on connections. Another key plant selection factor is function. When selecting plants for a green street, it's essential to first determine the function of the facility, that is, whether the vegetation will be providing shade, add color, or performing the task of infiltrating or treating stormwater. Plants vary in the services and benefits to a green street. To achieve desired results, choose plants based on function. Another key plant selection factor is maintenance. Most importantly, throughout the selection of plant material for a green street, keep things simple so that they can be easily maintained by those who will have the task. Understanding the long-term maintenance needs is critical to facilitate the selection of the right plants. Regardless of plant selection, all plantings will require maintenance, especially in the early years of establishment. Consider deciduous leaf drop or other vegetative changes like fruit drop that create litter and can become a safety hazard or clog drainage systems. Care should especially be taken near permeable pavement where function can be compromised with leaf litter. If possible, consider planning for regular street maintenance in your municipal plan. Another key plant selection factor is tolerance. It's highly advisable that any vegetation located adjacent to roads be tolerant of both salt applications and air pollution emitted from vehicular traffic. Where road salt application is excessively high, to support any native species, consider changes to the de-icing policy in order to balance public safety and environmental and community benefits. Another selection factor is characteristics. Plants' characteristics may be desirable only in certain situations. For example, plants that attract pollinators are ecologically beneficial and add colorful insect life to vegetation, but bees may not be ideal guests at a public park or school. Similar considerations should be given to plants that are known to be poisonous or have thorns. Another key plant consideration is whether the plants are native. It is preferable to use native when possible. However, options may be limited to meet desired functions of a condition or an aesthetic. Avoid invasive plants at all times. Another key plant selection factor is diversity. Diversity of plant species is encouraged as it contributes habitat for more species and increases resistance to future pests and diseases. When considering diversity, look beyond the project and consider the broader landscape context. To create healthy and resilient landscapes, species, spatial and age diversity needs to be considered. While diversity is encouraged, an overly complicated planting plan with too many species can make maintenance challenging. Simple diversity is encouraged. Another key plant selection factor is quantity. To improve the success of vegetation in stormwater installations, specifying a higher density of plants is recommended. This provides an immediate look of a system and reduces the potential for weeds to grow amongst the plants. Also, massing of different plant types rather than scattering or mixing different plant types together is encouraged to provide a less weedy look and a better ecological habitat for pollinators. Another key plant selection factor is seasonality. With our 4 distinct seasons, it is essential to consider a variety of plants in terms of structure. That is, selecting plants that are woody or retain structure, such as some ornamental grasses, during the winter can add interest year-round. Another consideration in plant selection in a Green Streets project is aesthetics. Green Streets projects should all be designed as community amenities, and plant selection can affect the feel of a space and should be carefully considered. However, complex spaces without proper maintenance risk looking chaotic and ineffective. Plantings can have a relatively formal and manicured appearance, or they can have a more natural look. Regardless, the choice of plant material should fit in the surrounding landscape context, that is, whether it's residential or urban or other. The overall diversity of plant material within a Green Street project can also affect aesthetics. A highly diverse planting palette with differing textures, colors, and growing heights can be very desirable. However, as mentioned previously, massing plants of the same species can help lower confusion when it comes to maintenance. For stormwater facilities that are smaller and more linear, such as stormwater planters, a single species planting may be more appropriate. Palette aside, it is important to design and install the plant material at an appropriate density. Too often, stormwater facilities are installed with too few plants, so few in fact that they can't really be called a green street. A well-designed stormwater facility should not have any bare ground showing after a 2-year plant establishment period. Additional considerations for the aesthetics of plant selection includes height and maintenance. In terms of height, except for trees, choose lower growing plant material that does not exceed 3 feet. Low-growing plants tend to be more aesthetically and functionally preferable for Green Streets applications. Low-growing plant varieties help to reduce ongoing maintenance by eliminating the need for plant trimming. They also allow visibility between road and sidewalk, which adds to safety and the feeling of safety within a space. The last aesthetic consideration is how much of the plant material should be designed as evergreen versus deciduous. It is recommended that at least 70% of the plant palette, excluding trees, be evergreen. This helps to ensure that Green Streets projects have year-round plant structure. Having a predominantly evergreen Green Street also helps slow water runoff due to the persistence of leaves. Green Streets projects may have different planting zones based on the type of stormwater facility used. Stormwater facilities that are designed with a side slope, for example vegetated swales, have 2 planting zones, dry and wet. Shrubs, ground covers, and perennials that thrive in drier conditions should be placed on the upper portions of the side slopes, while wet-tolerant plants such as sedges and rushes are best suited for the low, flat-bottom zone of the stormwater facility. Stormwater facilities that have only a flat-bottom condition with no slide slope, for example stormwater planters, have only one planting zone that should only be planted with wet-tolerant plant material. The illustrations show the typical planting conditions based on stormwater facility type. Please note, plants for either condition, wet or dry, need to be able to withstand the other. That is, plantings for wet zones also need to be able to tolerate drought conditions, and plantings for dry zones need to be able to tolerate being wet. Otherwise, supplemental irrigation during dry periods may be necessary. Similarly, plants need to be selected for their sun or shade tolerances, or they will not grow as intended. Plant selection guides are in abundance. However, specific to Vermont, we have a few suggestions here. The Vermont Tree Selection Guide by the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, Vermont's Landscape Plants for Vermont by the University of Vermont Extension Program, the Vermont Rain Garden Manual by the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District, UVM Extension and Lake Champlain Sea Grant, and additional resources available from the website listed. 2 final recommendations in plant selection considerations of a green street. Cross-reference resources and note any updates. Observe successful plantings of different species and in different facilities of existing projects throughout Vermont, nearby states, or provinces is recommended. Thank you and happy planting!
Thank you for watching. Next, you will hear Beth Banner lead you through Section 9, Implementing Green Streets.